my friends. Welcome to Inside the Minds of Authors. I'm DC Gomez, your host, and also an indie author. I'm thrilled you're joining me today for another fun interview with a passionate author. We're going to kick off this show with an exciting reading, so let's get started.
My name is Anthony Mitchell, author, speaker, poet, entrepreneur. I like to read a portion of my book titled No Sweat. How I adapted with ED. I must say God was with me all the way as he is still on this day. Not being able to sweat was something I never really realized was a problem for me being a child. All I knew when summer came around, all my friends were out playing. After I would join in, it wouldn't be long before I would be running back in the house or anywhere I could get some water to run all over my body, or as well as getting in front of the air conditioner to cool down. That is if I was not in school. Then back outside with my friends and cousins to play when I cooled down. Of course, the way it would hit me is when my body would get hot, starting with my feet. My feet would get so hot, something like standing or walking on hot coals, if I could describe it in any way. When I would feel like all my skin that was exposed was placed over fire to the point of where I felt like I was going to explode. Now keep in mind, as a child, you want to stay and play as long as I could take it, which of course wasn't very long at all. I mean, seconds seemed like minutes and minutes seemed like hours. Get the point? There was once a time on one of my family trips, our air conditioner in the car went out. So I was placed in the ice cooler, and when we stopped, ice was placed all over me to keep my temperature down. Let me tell you, like I felt heaven until the ice melted, and the cool water had to keep me comfortable till we reached somewhere else, rest till the sun went down. Early on, my mom came up with the idea of me simply wearing a big wet towel around my neck that would keep me cool. And at least for a little while longer, this made it feel as though I was able to stay out so much longer. Even though with the sun hitting the towel, it would even get warm. Thing about this is, I soaked my towel in ice cold water. You can imagine how much longer and colder it would be. I also like to read one of my poems, Forgiveness, with you. How can I say I love God and not my brother whom I see every day? Whatever the reason being does not justify it in any way. We've been taught to forgive, especially those who hurt us. So go deep inside yourself and remove anger, passion, and bitterness. We must recognize unforgiveness, as we've read, can destroy your soul. I have no idea how others feel, but to me, that's all I need to know. There's no way to receive the blessings of God which are promised to us in His Scripture. Forgiveness should be a consistent prayer which has been available since our very birth. Forgiveness isn't always easy to do. However, the rewards are beyond our worthiness. For all God sacrificed for us, it's no choice in walking in such emptiness. That one is forgiveness. And I have one more I like to read. It's source of my strength. Praise God in His infinite power always. Become an effective witness to those who are lost. Be thankful for what God has already done, for He has so graciously more than paid the cost. Love always your neighbor truthfully, which are God's children defined. We should also remember that answered prayers respectfully falls on His time. The storms that will definitely test our faith in all moments of our lives. Remember this when going through. It is always part of God's design. So brother, sister, friend of mine, take these words God has given me. Pass them on as you speak with conviction. I feel this is what God would have it be. Source of my strength.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Inside the Minds of Authors. Today, we have a brand new episode for you, and such an amazing author, poet, entrepreneur. Mr. Anthony is here with us. Hi, Mr. Anthony. How are you today?
I'm doing good. Blessed. How are you?
I'm fabulous. It's an amazing day. I'm so excited to have you. So you have something very fun for us. So it is a memoir as well as poems, which is very exciting. Tell us a little bit more about the book, where it came from, and a little bit about what it is it about, because I know a lot of people are not familiar with this topic.
Sure. Title of my book, I actually have two books. Living Without Sweat Glands. It was my first autobiography. Titled it Living Without Sweat Glands. And then I rebranded my second book, which I did a lot more on my own, self-published as well. And it's titled No Sweat. I really use that title for a big portion because I have no sweat glands. I was born with a rare genetic condition, which at the time, 1 out of 17,000 children are born each year with it. Knowing the challenges that I had gone through and some of the achievements that I've been blessed to be able to do, those who approach the book title not only as giving them an educational background on the condition and what I had to go through, but also approaching challenges in their lives as if they were no sweat. You approach them as you drive on, whether you stumble, fall, or whatever, you keep going on. So you approach challenges in your life with no sweat. And I go on in my book and speak of those that I've gone through, achievements and challenges. So I wanted to title that book something that everyone could relate to in some way, form, or fashion. And I eventually was able to get reaching out to me from different groups of this condition, which was enjoyable for me because I wasn't aware there were so many out there, although I'd read a little bit here and there, but Facebook brought a lot more attention and spotlight, I think, on it because there are millions of rare conditions and diseases out there. So no, we're not condition is the only one. So it is very enjoyable. So I wanted to do that. I always prayed that God bless me with the gifts he's given me to praise his name in each one of them. So my book is my testimony. The gifts that he's given me, I wanted to praise his name in each one of them, which is poetry, t-shirts, greeting cards, and music eventually is coming down the pipe. I wanted to do that, and that's what this book basically embodies, all the things that I've been blessed to be able to do.
I like the combination of your different forms of expressions that you're putting together. You're looking at how do you bring the message in as many different parts as possible. And you said you're making connection with different groups and you're speaking to people. Who is usually your target audience? Who are you talking to?
Well, the youth feel that those were the biggest challenges as a youth growing up because you're unaware of what this is, that why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? And it was just so many questions I had when I was younger that were later answered when I got older and hated myself more. So I wanted to target the youth. In the beginning, it was just the challenges that I've gone through. And then, of course, becoming more aware of there are the others out there just like me that it would be more relatable to them as well. That was the biggest point, touching the youth.
I like the fact that you're very focused about it. And sometimes we take for granted that if you do start early, you have a way of bringing them up and giving them hope and giving them a message that can connect with. One of the messages you talked about in the book, specifically the passage you read, tell us a little bit what it's like to be a teen, being a youth, living with this condition. And you're saying, you're going, your mother's covering you in a wet towel, you're trying to deal with the AC. How was that? What experience are you taking the readers through your book?
Most definitely. Well, as you mentioned, the topic, understanding the passion of persistence. Because all the things that I went through, going back and looking, it was my passion from wanting to play sports when I was in school. Fortunate to have some coaches that saw a little athletic talent in me. And I was passionate about sports, basketball and track. Football was kind of eliminated because there all the equipment you have to wear going through the training. So basketball and track were more less clothing. And so those things I had a passion for. So I excelled in them because I kept my passion, keeping God first and praying. I was brought up in a faith-based family. So that was definitely, and walking around as I go back grade school, it was very difficult because I knew a lot of times playing out on the playground with the other kids. I was fortunate to be able to, once educators there were aware of my condition and everything, I would simply just walk through the school halls of the school and under the air conditioning and everything. And it wasn't as fun as I knew it was playing outside with the other kids, but that gave me some comfort. I could at least look out the windows because at the time you just wanted to be cool. Not everything I wanted, everybody's outside, so it wasn't playing and everything, but walking through the school halls, that was difficult. And going through the family gatherings and things like that, growing up was a little difficult because I was more sheltered in areas where it was cool. Again, everyone was out playing, socializing and everything. I had my moments where I was able to step out a bit, but it took a big portion of that. So growing up with that, it was tough, but I thank God that He blessed me to be able to eventually move forward and realize that I still had a story. I still had a story to tell to hopefully inspire and encourage someone. That was a big portion of it there.
I'm still fascinated at the fact that you're telling us, you are youth playing sports and you have no cooling system. I never play sports and I can't cool off and I have a cooling system. How did you do that?
Oh my goodness. It was one of those things where I knew what I needed to do to keep cool. Sixth grade is when you're actually being looked at by some of the coaches and everything. So they knew that I had a little speed talent. I failed my physical. The doctor didn't feel comfortable in me playing sports with my condition and everything, but I was fortunate to have two coaches, Coach Williams and Coach Barron. I'll never forget. They let me know that there's a possibility that the doctor wouldn't let me because they were going to go to bat for me. So they went to bat for me. The doctor said as long as he keeps cool, they kind of pay attention to me, I'll approve him to play. So when I finally got to play, I would put on my clothing after I'd soaked them. For track and field, you have a tank top and shorts. I would soak those. And sometimes I would put a t-shirt that would be soaked underneath the tank top. So in track, that's what I did. And I was fortunate to run 5 different events: long jump, high jump, anchored both relays, from 100 to 200. I would, in between each one of those events, I would take a break and relax and cool down and everything, re-soak my uniform and get back out there. And I did the same in basketball. I would soak my tank top, my uniform, and put a t-shirt underneath my tank top, and I would soak it and I would play. And when I felt like I could go, I needed to take a break, the coach would pull me out, and I did that. I was fortunate to be able to do that and blessed to be able to do that. And I did that all the way up till I finished high school. And I really was thankful to be able to do that. Educational wise, it was a little difficult for me. And so retaining information made it difficult for me. So I struggled through school, grades wise and everything. I would do the staying after school, trying to get as much as I could for my education as well. But in order to play sports, we had to pass no play rule that came into play. So I had to go through that. The trophies and all the awards I won in track and field, they pulled all of those away from me out of the school and everything. The coach came and talked to me about it. It was beyond me that I knew because I had already graduated and went off school. He told me that was something that was done. They pulled the trophies and everything out because someone had mentioned to the board scholastically that I was too old. I was older than most kids and other things. Now, I wasn't supposed to play according to their rules. And that's more in my book where I explain that in detail how that happened. But all of that was put away. But I was thankful to be able to experience that. Yeah, I understand you had to go by the rules, and my age was maybe a year than my other counterparts, so it was something that they had to do. So, and my coach explained that to me, the whole deal from beginning to end, years later, what happened. That was the experience there. Was fortunate to be able to go through, take the bad with the good. I took it that way.
You talk about persistence, but also about resilience. I think resilience is a huge part in your story that a lot of the readers can connect with because you have a journey, even having to come back to high school and realizing you have done all these things amazing against all odds. And now they're going, yeah, but it doesn't count. I love your attitude. Your attitude is like, I'm glad that I was able to do it. So that's exciting. So resiliency is really huge. So when you're talking to the kids, this message, how is it taken? Because it connects with adults. How are the kids taking it?
Well, they still trying to get past it. You don't have sweat glands.
Like baby steps.
Yeah, so really you have sweat glands. That's one of those things that I wanted to bring my real life story to them and more to hopefully be a little bit more relatable opposed to giving them the dialogue of the condition and everything because I know that's something that may not be understandable. So that's something I hope to do in the future, a children's book, going through my life and with this experience and everything. But just explaining to them like from the playing in the schoolyard and to walking through the halls when it was hot and we're not able to do it to being at home with my family and friends and everything and having to watch the kids play from my window and then maybe dashing back out with a wet towel around my neck, kind of giving them stories and getting my first job in Texas, growing up in Texas where it's so hot. My first job working at a supermarket bagging groceries, I would go inside, you had bow tie, short sleeve collared shirt with khaki pants, and we had to wear them in the hottest time of the year. It's my first job there. Fortunate that I would be able to come back inside where it was cool, but after being out for bagging, delivering groceries to someone's car for X amount of minutes, it would take a toll on me. So just coming back inside to the cool air and not maybe having the time to cool down, bagging more groceries, I have to pull two more carts back outside. So I knew this wasn't going to be enough time for me to kind of cool down and go back. So I would actually walk into the coolers of the supermarket that I worked at. Freezer, you had to walk in and you had the freezers, and either one of them that I could get to faster, I would go in there and cool down and go back out. And I did that, of course, so I could sustain a little bit longer. So telling those stories that hopefully they would be a little bit more relatable to, bring a more of an impact to hopefully inspire them.
It's one of those things that you have a message, but you also have examples that they can draw upon. It's all about how creative you can get, how willing you are to step outside of the comfort zone, but be able to do it. At any point in time, you could have said, I'm too sick. I can't do this. I'm staying home. But you didn't. So, what motivated you to keep going? Like, what focus did you had that said, no, 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 I know this is bad, but I'm going to still do it?
Oh, it's a loaded question. Well, I have to say first, my parents instilled in us, you're going to have to work and earn your keep. Nobody's going to give you anything. Even though it was a little tougher for me, of course, than others, I kept that in mind. I wanted to work. My first job, as I spoke on, they weren't going to hire me. I was fortunate that my dad worked as a truck driver for the supermarket. And even though they told me they weren't going to be able to hire me because I felt compelled to tell them what my condition was, but I wanted to work. There was a part of me may not say anything, but I couldn't see leaving that out, knowing what the job entailed. And hopefully they would kind of understand whatever I had to do to kind of finish my job. And I had did that. My dad went back and spoke to the management over there. They were willing to give me a shot. And I did that, took that opportunity, and that's what I did to sustain myself. 3 years employed with that company. One of my first jobs.
I live in Texas, so it's just imagining Texas heat, trying to do this job, and then not being able to self regulate your body temperature. I'm like, oh my Lord, Miss Anthony. Like, my heart goes out to you because I'm like, whew, heat here is murder. I'm like, oh my Lord. So, you self published both of your books. What lessons have you learned in the self publishing world when it comes to memoirs?
One of the things that I use, and I had to research that because when I first started my journal, I was probably beginning toward the end of my beginning of my college years, and I was getting more in depth because I was bringing stories from those areas. I was just writing down everything that I experienced. And then when I became more educating myself and researching more on putting my book together, I thought to put them in chapters of my life, educating those about my condition, to playing sports, to getting my first job, playing basketball, running track, putting those in chapters. And I thought to do that. So I would write down a topic that I'm going to talk about, and I would go ahead and write when I got ready to do the editing of my book. After I had this long journal booklet of journal of things, I would put it down in those categories. That was one of the things that helped me to do that part of it. And as I learned, there were some things that I weren't experienced of, and just freelancing or asking questions to someone else. And then, so the first book was a learning experience. I had really hardly any input on a lot of it, from the cover to some of the information I wanted in it. They did their own editing and everything. So that was a learning experience. That was Living Without Sweat Glands, the first book. The second book is No Sweat, and I had more input on that. I was able to input some of the things that I'm doing, my greeting cards, my t-shirts and everything, along with my poetry. I was able to add those in there. Those were the things that I learned in the whole process of putting a book together, self-publishing. You may not know certain things. Educate yourself. We've heard of Google, University, YouTube. Educate yourself and ask someone who's published a book. But those things kind of help having more input in my second book.
You mentioned projects you're currently working on. Tell us a little bit about that. What are you working on now?
Yes, well, my whole movement is inspiration. I do inspirational poetry, as you know, my testimony, my book. So I wanted to embody, praise God and all the gifts He's given me. So embody that in everything that I do, that I've been blessed to do. So my inspirational poetry, my t-shirts have inspirational phrases on them, some of my snippets of my poetry. My greeting cards have inspirational poetry on them as well. And those are the things. And my music that I'm working on will have inspirational influences in a lot of that, basically. So, and I wanted to do that with everything that I worked on. I want to approach it in that manner. Those are the things that I'm currently working on is continue doing my t-shirts, my greeting cards, and my framed poetry. My fiance has been a big influence and she's very creative and putting her input in some of the things that I'm doing. So I'm very thankful and blessed for that as well.
That is beautiful. I'm glad you have a support team and one that is thinking in line with, hey, let's get this business, let's get this message out to the public and how to do it very effectively. So that is awesome.
Okay.
What advice would you give an up and coming author, who wants to write a memoir? What advice would you tell them that you wish you would have known when you started?
I would tell them just always keep God first and pray, because a lot that you're able to do that you don't realize because maybe you're sitting in the discouragement or the pity mode and that can really kind of hamper you, but definitely keeping God first, but also just doing it. We could come up with 1,000 reasons why, or we don't know enough, or what do I have to talk about, things like that. And those things can really overshadow the talents that you have and the story and the message that you have that you need to share. I feel like it's everyone's responsibility to tell their testimony. It may not be a book. It may be just someone that you see going through some of the same things you're going through. It may be going through nothing that you're going through, but they're going through some challenges and maybe your story can help them. So I would just tell them to just to keep on, do it and keep going regardless of what challenges or stumbling blocks come in your way. There's nothing wrong with having those stumbling blocks because they will come. How you go past them and how you get through them is going to determine how far you will go.
Absolutely. That is a great advice for any authors getting ready to start out and thinking, okay, what am I supposed to do? Absolutely. Keep going, keep focused. So, where can our listeners find you? Where can we find your book? Where can we find your merchandise? Where are you available at?
Well, they can Google my website, No Sweat Shop. You can also go to my Facebook page, Anthony Mitchell Author, my Instagram, Time to Shine 68, Twitter account, Not Over For Me Yet. My book, you can purchase it on Amazon. You can purchase Living Without Sweat Glands, also No Sweat, which is my current book. For all of my t-shirts and any of my greeting cards and everything, you can reach out to me.
That is exciting, Mr. Anthony. We are going to switch gears now. We have had such an amazing conversation, and I'm completely motivated. Your journey is outstanding. So let's have a little fun if that's okay. So we're going to do our lightning round. Are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Easy peasy. Let's do this. Winter or summer?
Winter.
I'm like, please say winter. Please say winter. Cats or dogs?
Dog.
Knight or pirate?
Night.
Oh, not bad. If you can pick one food that would describe you, what would you pick?
Would probably be lemon meringue pie.
Why?
Yes, because it has that sweet and sour taste. Gonna definitely hit you with a different facial. That's the first thing I could think of that would describe me.
I like that is very specific. Best advice you have ever heard.
Expect difficulties in every sense of the word. Challenges, expect them. Don't expect nothing to go as you plan.
I like it. Nice. Well, Mr. Anthony, do you have any closing remarks for us?
Yes, I like to read one more point if I could. Not that very
Sure.
long, but I wanted to share this. But before I read it, I'd like to say that thank you for the opportunity. I hope that my story that hopefully inspires someone and they're able to draw from it, relate to it, and maybe be able to pass it on to someone else. So I thank you for the opportunity, Ms. Gomez, and I'm looking forward to many more opportunities to do the same. The name of this poem is Why Forgive? Saved by the blood of Christ, given light where we once saw darkness. Always forever with me, I would be lost without his forgiveness. And unforgiveness, hard to keep, has no place in our lives. All the blessings God has for us, nurturing this behavior, blessings you denied. You have your walk with God, and I surely have mine. No doubt in my mind, I would choose him every time. Praying and praising God as often as I possibly can. Temptation is all around us. However, in him I will always stand. I extend my hand out of love. However, I can't force mine upon you. Of course, that's always a possibility. Still, God's Holy Spirit guides me on what to do. Why forgiveness?
Ooh, on that note, thank you, Mr. Anthony, for joining us. It has been absolutely a pleasure. And to our listeners, please go ahead, give this podcast a like, share it with a friend, invite somebody to join our community. It's always better when we do it together. Thank you so much for joining us in another episode of Inside the Minds of Authors. We will see you again next week for another exciting episode. Bye, everyone.